All right, everyone, welcome to this session of Pathways to Energy Efficiency. We will be getting started in just a moment. Okay, so if you're joining us today, we're going to spend this session talking about electricity in our home. We're going to break down where we use the most electricity in our home, and we're also going to talk about vampire loads. So vampire loads are pieces of your electrical equipment in your home that are plugged into your wall, and the vampire load refers to the amount of energy that they are using even when they're off. So we're going to talk about ways that you can address that and reduce that energy draw in your home. Just a quick reminder on what we've covered previously on Pathways to Energy Efficiency. We have spent the month of September covering a myriad of different topics, some of which are do-it-yourself fixes around your home to reduce the amount of energy that you're using. And therefore reducing some of your utility bills. We talked about the net zero home concept and how to achieve it. We went into how to read your utility bill and covered all the ins and outs of all those little charges that most of us don't know what they mean or what they are. And then lastly, last week we walked through the building envelope. We discussed what it is and how it affects the energy efficiency of your home and why it's important. So if you're interested in any of those topics, we encourage you to check out our previous videos that you can find right here on our Facebook page. Just head over to the videos tab and they're all labeled in sequential order there for you to check out on your own time. So once again, we are community energy advisors. My name is Catherine Ripstein and I cover Jefferson and Lewis counties, and my contact information is up there on the screen. Jennifer Perry is up in Clinton, Essex, and Hamilton counties, and you can reach out to her with energy questions by her contact information there. And Nick Hamilton Honey, who covers St. Lawrence and Franklin counties, and you can reach out to Nick at the contact information below. And we'll remind you of this information again at the end of the slides. So if you have any questions, you can be sure to reach out to us. Okay, so as we start talking about energy in our home and specifically electricity that we use in our home, I want to start with this chart, which breaks down nationally the national average of how electricity is used to run things in our home. So if you notice all the light blue areas here, this part of the graph is showing things like our lighting, our electronics, our appliances. It even includes this light pink area here, which is our refrigerator, which would fall into our appliance categories. And you can see that all of that part of the graph makes up about how much electricity we are using dedicated to those kinds of things. So our TVs, our microwaves, our washing machines and dryers. So those are all of our major appliances. In the darker pink colors, you can see that all that electricity is dedicated to space heating and air conditioning. Now this graph does represent a national average. So for someone up in the North Country, this graph might look slightly different. For instance, space heating is only represented as 15% of the energy use in this home. However, space heating for us in the North Country is going to represent a bigger portion of that graph because we have our cold winter months, and so we use our heating appliances more in our homes. So let's talk about the biggest users. We looked at that graph. We could kind of see a little bit of a breakdown of how we use energy in our homes. And so one of the biggest users, the biggest, is heating and cooling, especially for us up in the North Country. Heating, like I said, is a big portion of how we use our electricity. And so here we have a chart that has a breakdown of the price per unit of some of the most common fuels that we use to heat our homes. So you see fuel oil, propane, natural gas, and electricity. And over here on the farthest right-hand column, what we've done is we've taken the price per unit and we've converted it to price per BTU. And so we can compare those, because you can't really compare price per gallon with price per therm like you can when we've converted it all to the same unit there. And so if you notice in this graph, electricity is the most expensive way to heat your home. And the reason for that is because electricity is a secondary source of energy. What that means is that in order to create electricity, we have to have a primary source of electricity, or I'm sorry, a primary fuel to use to convert to electricity. So that might be fossil fuels. Most of our grid system now is created by fossil fuels and burning them, which is actually a very inefficient way to create electricity. About 41% of the energy from burning a fossil fuel is lost during the process of converting that over to electricity. And also, when we have our electricity moving through our grid lines, our poles, we lose a lot of electricity there too. So it's just a very inefficient way for us to use energy in our homes. And so we are having more renewable resources developed, and that's another, our grid system's made up of fossil fuels. It's also made up of some renewable resources like wind and solar. And those are becoming more popular as New York State moves to cleaning up the grid. But we're just not quite there yet. So we still have a long way to go. So when you're thinking of using electricity in your home to heat, instead of using electric resistance or space heaters, you might want to consider switching to a more efficient way of heating your home, like air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps. And we are going to be going over those next week in our renewable heating and cooling episode. So stay tuned for that and more information on that. But we also recognize that it's not always an option for you to switch over your home heating. It's pretty expensive to do, even though there are rebates that we'll talk about later. And also maybe you're a renter, you might not have that option. So that's where last week's episode, where we talked about building envelopes and sealing up our homes, the spaces, the cracks in our homes, to make a really airtight thermal boundary for our home, becomes really important. So if you want to check that out, just head on back to our last episode and learn a little bit about getting an energy audit and improving your building envelope. The second biggest consumption of electricity is our lighting. And so we are going to do a whole episode on lighting, but as a little teaser, we're going to take a look at these 4 different types of light bulbs here on this chart. You see over here in the wattage. So this is how much energy each light bulb is using. And so you can see incandescents, they use a lot of energy to produce light. So 60 watts here. Where if we compare onto our most efficient type of light bulb, the light emitting diode or LED light bulb, you can see this 9.5 of watt. And so what that's showing us is that for way less energy, is that the LED light bulb produces the same amount of light while using a lot less energy than something like an incandescent light bulb. So you can really save a lot of money by making that simple fix. If you have a light, and that doesn't mean you have to go out to the store and purchase all new light bulbs today, but when you have an incandescent light bulb burnout, instead of replacing it with another incandescent light bulb, which will burn out faster than an LED, consider buying the LED light bulb instead, and slowly you can convert your home over to that LED lighting. And if you see here, you can see that LED lights save 85% of the electricity that they use. That's a big energy saving. And here's another thing I want to point out, where when you purchase an incandescent light bulb in the store, they're cheaper than an LED. But that doesn't take into account the life of the light bulb. It doesn't take into account the energy savings you get from purchasing the light bulb. So if you do this annual cost per bulb, you can see that the incandescent light bulb is actually a lot more than the LED light bulb, even though when you're looking at it in the store, it might not seem that way. So LEDs are a really smart choice. They last much longer than the incandescent light bulb. Here you see 1,000 hours for an incandescent light bulb. That means that you're replacing that light bulb more times. So you're buying more and more light bulbs over the span of what an LED light bulb can give you. All right, and so the third main energy draw that we're going to talk about is appliances. And so the first thing you need to know about appliances is that, especially with combustion appliances, you should have them serviced regularly. A lot of times you can have a contract with who you purchase your system from, and they can come out and do a maintenance check on them every so often. But it's really important to have them serviced by a professional regularly. It keeps them working efficiently and well. Another thing you want to consider is when you are going to replace an appliance, you want to try to look for Energy Star appliances. These are rated to be very energy efficient. They draw less energy to do the same amount of work, just like the LED light bulb uses less energy to do the same amount of work as the incandescent light bulb. You want to unplug small appliances when they're not in use. So obviously we can't unplug our refrigerators or our freezers, but things like our microwaves, they are drawing on electricity, and we're going to get into that as we're discussing moving into the vampire loads. But if you're not using that microwave, if you unplug it, you're going to be saving a little bit of energy there. And finally, things like our refrigerators and our freezers, we want to make sure that we are checking the temperature in them. So your freezer should be set at about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's set colder than that, you're using energy that you don't need to be. 0 degrees Fahrenheit is the right temperature to have your freezer at. So adjusting that will help you save some energy. And just like that, the refrigerator should be set at about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Any lower than that is just a little bit too much. You don't really need that to be to keep your food at a healthy temperature. And then you're going to want to clean the coils on the back of your refrigerators and freezers. You can see in this picture here that those dusty coils, if you can clean those off and service them, then they're going to be able to operate at the correct level. They're going to be operating more efficiently than if we left them dirty. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nick, and Nick is going to take us into the main topic of our discussion today, which is addressing those vampire and phantom loads.
Thank you, Katie. So yeah, vampire and phantom loads. We're not, while we're in October and we do have Halloween at the end of the month, these vampire and phantom loads exist in your home every day. And so like Katie told us at the beginning, this is energy used by appliances or electronics, even when they're in what we think of as shut off or standby mode. And vampire loads can account for as much as 20% of your monthly electric bill. So that's pretty significant. And so why do appliances and electronics actually leech this power from our system, right? So if we think about all of the electronics that have, remote controls or anything that is a device that has a standby or a sleep mode, and that we are able to automatically recall it to full levels. In order to have these do those things, have those appliances and electronics do those things, they have to be taking energy out of the system and being ready for when you're ready, right? And a lot of our connectivity with modern technology is a reason why we will have some of this phantom or vampire load. And so really, what's the difference between on, standby, and off, right? So if we're looking just here at a fax machine, you can turn it on, and then after a while, when it hasn't been in use, it'll go to that standby mode, right? But just because it's in standby mode doesn't mean that it's not using a lot of electricity. So here, the on mode of this fax machine uses 6.22 watts of energy, and the standby, or what we would think of as off mode, is 5.31 watts of energy. So you're not having a lot of savings there, right? By turning something the whole way off and then turning it back on and just waiting those few seconds until it boots itself up again, you actually wind up saving a lot of energy. This is also, you know, kind of when we hear folks say, hey, you're not in the room, turn off the light. And you're like, oh yeah, but I'm gone 30 seconds. You know, these add up. So what are some of those remote ready devices that use standby power? And one of the really big draws of standby power, this vampire energy, are desktops and monitors. So if you think about, you know, you have your desktop, it's on, it's running, you have the monitor up and running, but then it goes into standby, but you come back after, you know, maybe an hour, 2, 3 hours away. And you just do that short little mouse shift, and then everything wakes up again. That's using a lot of standby power just to be ready for when you shake that mouse and get it to wake up again. Faxes, we saw that in the example, but also printers. So printers that are plugged in and drawing power, waiting for that signal from either the laptop or your desktop that, oh, there's a job to be done. Satellite and cable boxes. So these are, you know, when you're trying you want to have something on DVR when you're not at home. These boxes are always up and ready to go, making sure that, you know, it's getting the information that you want as far as recording a show or whatever. But again, that standby power, that vampire energy. Stereos, same thing. TVs, and TVs can make a huge difference in what type of TV it is. So plasma TVs can draw more standby power than some of the other TVs that are out there. Microwaves, garage door openers, video game consoles, and the more video game consoles you have and have them plugged in, the more energy that's drawing. It's that vampire load. And so then some of the obvious non-remote vampire loads, so these aren't like, you know, I've got a remote control for this thing, which some of them you can have, but these are generally the non-remote vampire load appliances, are those microwaves, because they have a timer or clock on it. Your digital clocks. Again, it has the date, time, whatever on the face. So to keep that going, it's drawing power. Your modems, so running your Wi-Fi. And then if you still have a landline and have an answering machine, the answering machine itself is drawing power. And then some of our kind of not so obvious vampire load appliances, and some of this is again that technology. So, you know, a gas range might be drawing a little bit of power for the clock. But on our refrigerators, and especially our kind of like connected refrigerators, you can have Bluetooth access, you can make lists online. All of these are extra draws on a load. It's vampire load. It's, you know, for when you're wanting to use it, but you're still drawing that power all the time. Air conditioners, because they have to be able to gauge what's going on in your indoor air setting. So it's always drawing a little bit of energy just to make sure that everything's balanced and then it can turn on. Furnace, kind of the same thing. Electric toothbrushes. And again, if you have more than one, you have all of those that are drawing those vampire loads. So plugging in your phone or your laptop or your iPad or whatever cell phone or laptop device, after it's charged, you want to disconnect it from the wall outlet because it will still draw power, right, while you're in use, instead of just using the device. And then once it's gotten to a point where you can plug it in and recharge that device. There's some very limited draw when you take your power cord off your phone when it's still plugged into the wall. That is very, very small though. And then coffee makers. So if you have a Keurig or, you know, a coffee pot that's programmable, all of those things, if it's got a timer or set device to it, those are using, that's a vampire load, right? It's using extra energy to make sure that your coffee comes on at 6 or 6:30, 7, whatever, in the morning and brews you that pot of Java. You know, it's pulling out energy from your wall to do that. Even when you're not drinking your coffee, it's drawing that energy. And so what does that really look like in our grid today? How much does a vampire load actually cost us? And according to a report by the NRDC, it costs about $19 billion, and that's with a B, billion, of vampire energy costs, just because of all the technology we have in our homes, right? And that on average can mean anywhere from $165 to $440 per household. And that really depends on, again, like your location and the rates for your electricity in your area. And so around, and again, we heard this at the beginning of talking about vampire loads, is that around 20% or 23% of power consumption is some form of idle load electricity. And so how can we reduce vampire loads? Unplug when charged. And this really makes a difference when we think about how we plug in our cell phones and how we leave them to charge overnight. But a lot of our modern technology, and especially in our cell phones, allows fast charging. So it might only take, you know, half an hour, hour and a half for your cell phone to charge. But if you plug it in at night and let it charge overnight, then that's taking extra charge even after it's fully charged, that device. So it might mean that you want to just charge it towards the end of the day or first thing when you wake up in the morning. These are just some adaptations you can use for when to unplug your charging devices. And like Katie said in the beginning with appliances, if you're not using it all the time and it's not something you need to worry about having plugged in all the time, like your refrigerator or freezer, unplug it. Do you need to always have the microwave plugged in? Does it matter if your food processor is always plugged in? You know, if it's near the plug, you can just plug it when you're ready to use. Same with coffee makers. And there's some great technology as far as power strips to help us reduce our vampire load. And the power strip that's the whole way on the left there has a little remote sensor. And what happens is you actually plug in the thing you're going to use the most. I'm going to use an example here as a TV. So the TV would get plugged in first. When you hit the button on your remote control to turn the power onto the TV, that will send a signal to the remote control on the power strip to turn the power on to that strip. And then you have to hit the power again and your TV will turn on because it has not been getting that standby load. But if you hit the remote control, that's going to sense that you want the power and then you hit it and it comes on. That'll save you that standby power, that trickle charge. you can have the TV plugged in, and then as soon as the TV is requesting a load, it can actually then have a process of requesting a load for other electronics. So most people might have a TV and a game console. So you turn on the TV, then the game console will also have power, but it's not having that standby power. Or if you have a DVD player separate of your TV or gaming console, that would be requesting power from having the TV on. So these are really great as far as being able to use with electronics. The center one is a good one for using with your computers. There's going to be a base or a control. You plug that in. That will then allow, again, other things to access the power when that thing is on. So if you plug in your laptop as the control, but you also have your printer plugged in one of the plugs a little further down, then when you're using your laptop, the printer will be able to access the power, but it's not always on. And these also come in kind of that like plug into both portions of your plug outlet. And this is like the one on the right. It gives you those two plugs in the front, but then it also gives you access to USB plugs on the side, which can be really nice to charge some of your other devices that don't necessarily need to have the plug itself. So where can you find, next slide, where can you find some of these like smart plugs or programmable things or cheaper LED lights? Both National Grid and NYSEG have marketplaces, and you can go ahead and check those out. They usually have sales on something every week that you can get reduced rates for LED bulbs or the smart plugs like you just saw on the last slide, programmable thermostats, a lot of different technology that can help you reduce your energy consumption and become more energy efficient. And so this is just the National Grid Marketplace website. The next slide is the NYSEG Marketplace for, again, light bulbs, smart energy plugs, etc. And then what's coming up? So what do we have coming up on pathways to energy efficiency? Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about heating and cooling with ground source and air source heat pumps. Fourth Coast will be joining us and talking a little bit more about these. The week after that, we have renewable heating with biomass boilers and pellet stoves. We have Guillermo Metz from CCE Tompkins County joining us that day. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit about solar. This is actually going to go into two episodes of our Pathways to Energy Efficiency. We're going to talk a little bit more about residential solar, and then also talk about some of our options for subscription solar and solar for all. And as we start to wrap up this episode of Pathways to Energy Efficiency, again, we are your community energy advisors. We cover Jefferson and Lewis counties, that's Katie. Jen covers Clinton, Essex, and Hamilton counties. And then I cover St. Lawrence and Franklin counties. And just any questions? It looks like, do energy audits look at home electrical use and appliances? Yes. So when we were talking about how to go to net zero, we talked about energy efficiency, then renewable heat and solar. And energy efficiency piece, that's that, you know, getting a home energy audit, free home energy audit. And those auditors, those contractors that do the assessments, the audits, actually look at your energy use and how you are using energy in your home, and then also your appliances and whether those appliances are efficient. And then sometimes with some of the programs, there's actually incentives to replace some of these older appliances. So depending on your income, you might be eligible for the Empower program, the Assisted Home Performance program, or you might be market rate. But to find out about these different programs, you can contact your community energy advisor about what program you would qualify for as far as getting a free home energy audit. Yes, are there another question? Are there ways to figure out how much energy your appliances or electronics are using? Yes, there's it's called a kilowatt meter. And what you do is you can plug it into the wall and you plug that electronic or appliance in, and you can actually get a reading as to how much energy those particular appliances are drawing. And you can actually set it up so the kilowatt meter keeps track over a period of time and gives you an average of what the appliance or electronic is drawing. Looks like there is no more questions right now. Should you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We are here to help answer any questions you have about energy efficiency, energy audits, or any of the such.
All right, thank you everyone. And make sure you tune in next week as we talk about renewable heat. Have a great day.